there! Today we're going to take a look at this book by American illustrator Andrew Loomis, and that book is Figure Drawing for All It's Worth. Obviously, this is a book about figure drawing, but it's not necessarily best for everybody, depending on what you're looking to do. So today we're going to have a look through this book, and I'm going to share who I think this book is best suited for and why. Let's go ahead and take a look inside. So here's the figure drawing book. I gotta say I love the color because it feels a little bit Art Deco. So let's look at when this one was originally published. This is kind of divided in the same way. It was written in 1943. So we've got, male, female, ideal proportions. Everything is kind of based in a very European style. So here we go. We start off with the ideal proportions of the male and the female. These things I find really interesting. Like if I would have encountered this as basically the second concept when learning how to figure draw, I would not have been able to do any of this at all. So again, I think that this is helpful for understanding and for thinking about things. Again, a lot of this is really helpful, really complicated with perspective here. If you want to draw from imagination and you want to think of stories and moving characters around, studying this mannequin and getting really comfortable with it so that you can start to draw people in different positions is definitely helpful, handy, and doable. These are two really incredibly helpful charts on many, many levels. These are something that I would recommend photocopying, printing them out, and putting them up on the wall of your studio if you're wanting to learn figure drawing, because there's a lot here in terms of, it's just like these little snippets of information, but they all relate to anatomy, right? So all of these little furrows here, and there's just a note like bone, outlines pass, and over here it says furrows. So it's not giving you a lot of information about why. It's really simplified. But this is all because the muscles of the calf insert up this direction, and the muscles of the hamstrings insert down that direction. So all of these are really important little things to look for because they tell you something about the anatomy. So maybe this chart doesn't explain all of that, but it's really helpful to look here and, keep noticing these things and then learning what's happening underneath. Of course, I love anatomy, so I think studying these charts is an excellent idea. I have my own way of studying anatomy, so I know that looking at the charts and copying the charts is helpful, but only to a limit. But these are where I think that you start to be able to apply that information. So looking at more realistic figures and then putting the musculature over the top is really helpful. So, I think that that's what he's trying to say here is to learn the musculature and then figure out how to put that over the top of other figures so that you understand where the muscles are going. Right, begins to talk more sculpturally here, how to understand the form and get the lighting. How to think about foreshortening, but I also see this as just really being able to understand the surface of the figure, understand 3 dimensions. That can help you not only with foreshortening, but with shading. Underneath. The idea too is if you know a lot of this anatomy and you kind of memorize these landmarks, that can help you when you're inventing figures and characters. So I think this is interesting. Before you undertake to draw from the living model, be sure you have absorbed all the preliminaries so far discussed. These are the proportions of the idealized figure, the general framework, the relationship of perspective to the figure, movement and action, the mannequin and simplified building of the form, the anatomic construction, the planes by which we build light and shadow, foreshortening, the fundamentals of light and shadow, and the true modeling of form. So what I find interesting here is that what he is saying is you need to study all of that and understand it before you sit in front of the live model and observe. So that's really interesting because I kind of think the opposite. I kind of think that you should observe some live models or observe some models from photos and try and learn how to translate those shapes and measure the proportions in some way and understand what you're looking at. And then I think, all of these begin to make more sense once you have that, kind of basic understanding. So that's just my point of view, is I actually feel like it's the opposite. But I also feel like it's cyclical. I feel like every time you work from life, that informs what you're doing from all these sets of rules or from your imagination. And then every time you learn more about the structure, the anatomy, the rules, the more it informs what you're seeing from life and what you're able to put on the paper. Now, these are some interesting things too, some ideas about drawing from the model to find your halfway point each direction, and to maybe even make a viewfinder this way out of cardboard, and that you can measure the heads, how many heads tall somebody should be, and the halfway point each direction, and that can help you transfer from the live model. I've never tried that myself, though I've seen people do it, and I find it really interesting. I think that would be a good experiment for sure. Here we are with the heels again. So again, as I'm kind of coming toward the end of this book, I don't see this book as a how-to very much. I think that there's a lot, especially in the beginning of the book, for how to study the symbolic structure, the symbolic layout of a figure, how to understand the dimensions. But I really see this more as inspiration for a whole variety of different ways to think about the figure. But there's so much information in here, I feel, that is just really helpful to making a well-rounded aspect of your entire figure drawing education. So I recommend this in conjunction with more things that are about how to observe what you're actually looking at, who you're actually looking at, rather than going based off ideals and concepts. And then if you're wanting to invent characters, definitely there are other books. I would say probably even a lot of more current books that have to do with cartooning and animation. I think that's where you're really going to find more inspiration for a bigger variety of figures and body types and all of that. Hey, thank you so much for checking out this book with me today. I hope that you found this review helpful. If there are other books that you would like to see reviewed, leave it in the comments below. Thank you, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.